The black armored convoy rolled through the wrought iron gates of the Ashford estate at exactly 7 in the evening, and every servant standing in the receiving line felt their knees weaken at the sight. 6 vehicles. Silent, precise. Moving in a formation that spoke of military discipline, and something far darker. Inside the grand foyer of the mansion, Vivian Ashford adjusted the diamond choker at her throat, and smiled with the confidence of a woman who had never been told. No, tonight was her night. EVNAA, night was her night. Tonight, Damiano Cross, the most feared and powerful man on the eastern seaboard, was coming to sign a marriage contract with her. A contract her father had spent 2 years negotiating. A contract that would make the Ashford name untouchable. Behind her, standing quietly in the shadow of the marble staircase, was her older sister Nora. Nora Ashford was 28 years old, and she had spent every one of those years being told she did not belong in this house. She was plus size, softly rounded, with a full face, warm brown eyes, and heavy chestnut hair that she had pinned back into a simple bun. She wore a plain black dress that the housekeeper had chosen for her. The kind of dress meant to make her invisible against the wallpaper. Her arms were full and soft. Her hips were wide. Her double chin dimpled when she looked down, which she did often, because looking down was safer than meeting her stepmother's eyes. She was the daughter of the first wife. The wife who had died. The wife nobody spoke of. And tonight she had been ordered to serve drinks, not to sit at the table, not to greet the guests, to serve drinks. Silently, invisibly. Like the staff, she did not protest. She never did. The great oak doors swung open. The man who walked through them stopped every conversation in the room. Damiano Cross was tall, impossibly tall. Broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that had clearly been made for him alone, with dark hair swept back from a face that was terrifyingly calm. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they moved across the room like a blade, cataloging every person, every exit, every threat. He was 34 years old. He controlled shipping ports, private banks, and half the political favors in 3 states. He had never been photographed smiling. Behind him walked his second-in-command, a lean man with silver at his temples, named Marco Reyes, whose sharp gray eyes missed absolutely nothing. Reginald Ashford, patriarch of the family, rushed forward with both hands extended, his practiced smile straining at the corners. "Damiano, my friend. Welcome. Welcome to our home. May I present my daughter Vivian?" Vivian stepped forward with the grace of a woman who had been rehearsing this moment for months. She dipped into a small, elegant curtsy. She looked up at Damiano through her lashes. She was beautiful. Everyone knew she was beautiful. Slim, blonde, sculpted, taught from birth to be exactly the kind of ornament a powerful man might want on his arm. Damiano looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Then his eyes moved past her father, past the arranged flowers and the champagne fountain, and stopped on the woman standing in the shadow of the staircase, holding a silver tray of glasses. He did not blink. Nora felt the weight of his stare before she registered its source. She looked up, met his eyes for one accidental second, and immediately looked back down at her tray. Her cheeks flushed hot. Her hands trembled just enough to make the glasses tinkle against each other. She was terrified she had done something wrong. She always assumed she had done something wrong. She always assumed she had done something wrong. She did not know that in that single second, Damiano Cross had seen her, truly seen her, for the first time in 3 years. Because Damiano Cross had known who Nora Ashford was for a very long time. And he had first seen her by accident 18 months ago, at a small charity hospital in the poorer district of the city. He had been there under a false name, delivering an anonymous donation for the children's ward. She had been there, volunteering, reading storybooks, to a little girl with a shaved head and a bright pink beanie. He had stood in the doorway for 11 minutes unnoticed, and he had listened to her do all the different voices for the characters. He had watched her laugh when the little girl laughed. He had watched her cry, quietly, in the hallway, afterward, when she thought no one could see. He had asked Marco to find out who she was. Marco had told him. Nora Ashford, elder daughter of Reginald. Ignored. Uneducated formally, though brilliant on her own, kept in the house like an inconvenient piece of furniture. Damiano had said nothing that day. But something inside him, something that had been frozen since he was 14 years old, and had watched his own mother die, had cracked open just slightly. He had accepted the meeting with Reginald Ashford 6 months later, when the man had proposed the marriage alliance with his younger daughter, only because it would put him in the same room as Nora. He had come tonight for one purpose, and it was not to marry Vivian. Reginald was still talking. Something about the dining room, something about the wine cellar. Damiano had stopped listening. "Reginald," he said quietly. The single word cut through the chatter like a knife through silk. Everyone went still. "Yes, my friend. Yes, of course, anything. That woman with the tray. Who is she?" Reginald blinked. He turned. He looked at Nora as though seeing her for the first time in years, which was not far from the truth. "Oh, that is Nora, my elder daughter, from my first marriage. She is not part of the family arrangement. Please do not concern yourself with her, I see." Damiano's voice held no inflection. Marco, standing at his elbow, felt the temperature in the room drop by 10 degrees and had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from smiling. He knew that tone, he had heard it exactly twice before in his life, and both times it had preceded the total destruction of a rival empire. "Nora," Damiano said. Nora nearly dropped the tray. "Yes, sir. Come here, please." The word "please" from that man in that voice was more terrifying than any command. Nora walked forward on legs that felt like water. She stopped in front of him, and she was very aware that she barely came up to the middle of his chest. She was aware that she was the largest woman in the room, in her plain black dress, holding a silver tray of champagne glasses, and that every eye in the foyer was now fixed on her. She was aware that Vivian, standing to her left, was staring at her with an expression of pure, cold fury. "Sir," Nora whispered, "may I offer you a drink?" Damiano looked down at her. And his storm-gray eyes softened just a fraction, in a way that only Marco was close enough to see. "Nora?" "Yes, sir. Put the tray down." She hesitated. She glanced at her stepmother, Cordelia, who was making frantic slashing gestures with her eyes that Nora did not know how to interpret. She glanced at her father, who had gone the color of chalk. "Nora," Damiano said again, softer this time. "Please, put the tray down." She set it carefully on the console table beside her. The glasses whispered against the wood. Damiano turned to Reginald. "There has been a misunderstanding, Reginald. I came here tonight to accept a marriage. I intend to leave here tonight with a bride, but the contract you drew up was based on a false premise. You offered me your daughter, and you did not specify which one." The silence that followed was so complete that Nora could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the library, 2 rooms away. Vivian made a small, sharp sound like a wounded cat. Reginald's mouth opened and closed. "Aye. Damiano, Nora is. She is not suitable. She has not been prepared. She has no accomplishments. She has no training. She is." "She is what?" Damiano asked, still soft. Reginald swallowed. He did not answer. Cordelia stepped forward, her voice honeyed and desperate. "Mr. Cross, you must be joking." Nora is a sweet girl, of course, but look at her. Look at Vivienne. Surely you can see. I can see, Damiano said. He turned back to Nora. He extended one hand, palm up. Long fingers. A heavy signet ring. A small scar across the knuckle. Nora Ashford. Will you leave this house with me tonight? Nora stared at his hand. She was 28 years old, and no one had ever asked her a question like that. No one had ever asked her, really, what she wanted. Not once, in her entire life. She looked up at him. She looked at his face, and she tried to understand what was happening because none of it made sense. This was Vivienne's night. This was Vivienne's contract. This was Vivienne's future being carefully arranged in gold letters. Why was this terrifying, impossibly powerful man asking her? Nora, the girl who served drinks, to leave with him. I do not understand, she whispered. You do not have to understand tonight, he said. You only have to answer. Will you come with me, Father? Vivienne hissed. Father, do something. Reginald did not move. Reginald had, in that moment, remembered exactly who Damiano Cross was, and he had remembered exactly how much of his own fortune was borrowed against Damiano's banks, and he had understood, with the sudden clarity of a man watching his own funeral, that saying no was not an option. Nora, he said hoarsely. Nora, if the gentleman wishes. I asked her, Reginald, Damiano said without looking away from Nora. Not you. Her Nora took a small breath. She looked at his hand. She looked at his face. She looked one last time at the shadowy corner of the staircase where she had spent her entire life pretending not to exist. She put her hand into his. His fingers closed around hers. Warm. Steady. Enormous. Yes, she said. And Damiano Cross, the silent king, smiled for the first time in a decade. The drive from the Ashford estate to Damiano's compound took 40 minutes, and Nora spent every one of them staring out the window of the armored car, trying to convince herself that she had not lost her mind. She was sitting in the back seat of a car worth more than her entire wardrobe would earn in 10 lifetimes. She was sitting next to a man who had, less than an hour ago, publicly rejected her beautiful younger sister in front of 30 people to take her instead. She was still wearing her plain black serving dress. She had not packed a bag. She did not even have her toothbrush. She had nothing. And yet, for the first time she could remember, she did not feel afraid of what came next. She felt something else. Something warm and small and unfamiliar, sitting just behind her breastbone like a candle someone had lit while she was not looking. Damiano did not speak during the drive. He sat beside her, close but not touching, his gaze fixed on the passing city lights. Every so often he glanced at her, just a flick of the eyes, as though he wanted to make sure she was still real. Marco sat in the front passenger seat and, twice, caught Damiano's eye in the rearview mirror and lifted one eloquent silver eyebrow. Damiano ignored him both times. Marco was going to have questions later. Marco was going to have so many questions. When the convoy passed through a second set of gates and Nora saw the house, she made a small sound in her throat. It was not a house. It was a fortress. Long and low and elegant, built of pale stone and dark glass, set into the side of a wooded hill so that half of it seemed to grow out of the earth itself. Warm light glowed from every window. There were fountains. There were gardens. There were, she noticed with a jolt, armed men in dark suits standing at regular intervals around the perimeter, and they all bowed their heads slightly as the car passed. This is where I live, Damiano said quietly. End of 4. As of tonight, this is also where you live. Nothing will be asked of you that you do not agree to. You will have your own rooms. You will have staff. You will have anything you require. Do you understand? Yes, Nora. He turned to face her fully now, and his voice was very careful. You are safe here. I need you to know that before anything else. You are safe. From your father? From your stepmother? From your sister? From anyone? Do you understand what I'm telling you? She looked at him. Her eyes filled with tears. She did not know she was holding. Why me? She whispered. Please. I have to know. Why did you do this? She is the beautiful one. She is the one everyone wanted you to. Damiano was silent for a long moment. I saw you, he said finally. A year and a half ago at the Children's Hospital in the Eastern District. You were reading to a little girl named Alice. She had leukemia. You did all the voices. Nora went very still. Alice had died 4 months later. Nora had gone to her small funeral, alone, and had cried in her car afterward for 2 hours. I was there that day, Damiano continued. You did not see me. I stood in the doorway and I watched you, and I could not remember the last time I had seen anyone be that kind for no reason at all. I asked who you were. I have been paying attention, Nora, for a long time. Paying attention? Yes, you mean. She swallowed. You mean you have been watching me? I mean I have been making sure you were safe, he said. Which was harder than it should have been in that house. I mean that when your father tried to marry your sister off to a man he thought could help him, I made certain that the man he found was me. Because I wanted to be in the same room with you again, because I wanted to give you the chance to leave. Nora put both hands over her mouth. The tears spilled over. She did not know what to do with any of what he was telling her. You do not know me, she whispered. I know enough, he said. I know you volunteer at 3 shelters. I know you send your entire allowance to a woman named Helen, who used to be your nanny and who has cancer now. I know you read philosophy at night in the kitchen when the rest of the house is asleep. I know that you cried at Alice's funeral even though you had only known her for 6 weeks. I know that you have never once, in 28 years, been chosen first for anything. He reached out. Very slowly, he took her hand again. I would like to be the person who chooses you. First, Nora, if you will let me. Wah. She could not speak. She could only nod, one small nod, and let him hold her hand the rest of the way up the long drive. Marco, in the front seat, closed his eyes, and thought, oh, my old friend, you are so much further gone than I realized. Tay. The first 3 weeks in Damiano's house were the strangest of Nora's life, and also, without question, the happiest. She had been given a suite of rooms on the 2nd floor, overlooking the eastern gardens. Her bedroom was larger than the entire ground floor of the Ashford house. There was a walk-in closet the size of a small apartment, filled, on the morning after her arrival, with clothes in exactly her size, clothes that fit her wide hips and full bust and soft arms perfectly, clothes made of silk and cashmere and soft cotton, clothes that draped and flowed and made her feel. She had asked, on the 3rd day, who had chosen the clothes. The housekeeper, a kind woman named Beatrice, had smiled and said, the master, madam, he selected every piece himself. Nora had gone into the closet, and sat on the floor, and cried for 20 minutes. Damiano did not push her. He did not touch her. Beyond taking her hand sometimes, when they walked in the garden. He did not make demands. He ate breakfast with her every morning in the sunroom. He asked her about the books she had read. He listened. Really listened, in a way that no one had ever listened to her before, as though every small opinion she offered was a rare and precious thing. He worked, of course. He would disappear into his study for hours at a time. She would hear the low murmur of his voice through the heavy door, sometimes in English, sometimes in Italian, sometimes in languages she did not recognize. Men in dark suits came and went. Wah! Marco was always there, always watching, always with that small dry smile hovering at the corner of his mouth. On the 5th day, Marco found her in the library, and sat down across from her with 2 cups of tea. "May I speak plainly, Miss Ashford? Please. I have known Damiano Cross for 22 years. I have seen him negotiate with cartel leaders, and I have seen him bury his enemies, and I have seen him take a bullet without flinching. I have never in all that time seen him look at a human being the way he looks at you." Nora flushed pink, from her collarbones to her hairline. "Marco, I am not asking you to feel anything. You do not feel. I am simply telling you so that you know. That man would burn down the world for you. He has in fact been quietly rearranging pieces of the world for over a year for you. So when he asks you questions, and you do not know how to answer, please remember, he is not testing you. He is trying, very badly, to court you. He has never courted anyone before. He is doing his best." Nora laughed, a small, watery laugh, and Marco smiled at her over his teacup. "Welcome home, Miss Ashford." By the end of the 3rd week, she had begun to relax. She had begun to laugh at breakfast. She had begun to reach for Damiano's hand herself sometimes, without waiting for him to reach for hers. He noticed every time. His whole face changed. Every time in a way she was only beginning to be able to read. And then, on the 22nd day, the phone calls started. The first one came at 9 in the morning. Nora's own phone, which Damiano had given her, buzzed on the breakfast table. She glanced at it. "Vivian." She let it ring out. It rang again immediately, and then again, and then again. On the 4th call, Damiano looked up from his newspaper. "Do you want me to answer it?" "No, no, I should. She is my sister," she answered. Vivian's voice, sharp as broken glass, poured out of the speaker. "How dare you? How dare you steal my life? Do you have any idea what you have done to this family? Do you have any idea what people are saying? Father has had 3 deals collapse this week. 3. Because everyone thinks he tried to trick Damiano Cross and got publicly humiliated in return. You have ruined us. You, the fat serving girl who was never supposed to matter. You have ruined everything." Nora closed her eyes. Damiano was watching her. His face had not changed, but something in the set of his shoulders had gone very, very still. "Vivian," Nora said quietly. "He asked me. I said yes. That is all that happened. He asked you because you tricked him. You must have. You must have said something to him beforehand. You must have. He would never have chosen you. Look at you. Look at you, Nora." "Goodbye, Vivienne." Nora ended the call. Her hand was shaking. She set the phone down. Damiano stood up. He walked around the table. He crouched down beside her chair so that their eyes were level, and he took both of her hands in his. "Nora, listen to me. I chose you because there was no one else in the room worth looking at. Do you hear me? No one. Your sister could have been a queen or an empress or a goddess, and I would still have walked past her to get to you. Look at me." She looked at him. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in my life," he said quietly. "The way you look, the way you laugh, the way you carry yourself. Every part of you there has never been anyone else. Do you hear me?" She nodded. "Say it, Nora. I need to hear you say it." "I hear you," she whispered. He lifted her hand to his mouth and pressed a kiss into her palm and did not let go for a long time. Later that afternoon, Marco came into the study with a file. Damiano was standing at the window watching Nora walk in the garden below, a small bright figure in a pale blue dress among the roses. "Boss, yes? The Ashford girl, Vivienne. She has been in contact with someone." Damiano turned. "Who?" "That is the interesting part. Do you remember the name? Cassian Vale? Damiano's expression did not change, but the air in the room went sharp. Yes. She met him 3 times this week. Once at a hotel bar, once at a private club, once at his house. Cassian Vale wants my ports. Cassian Vale wants everything you have. And he now, apparently, has a very angry young woman, with intimate knowledge of your household, your fiancé, and your daily routine. Willing to talk. Damiano was silent for a long moment. How much does the sister know? Enough to be a problem. She spent 28 years in that house watching Nora. She knows things about Nora that we would have to work to discover. Weaknesses, fears, where she goes, who she trusts. So Vale will use Nora. Yes, boss. That would be my assessment. He will use Nora to get to you. Damiano turned back to the window. Below, Nora had stopped to smell one of the roses. She was smiling. A small private smile, tilting her face into the afternoon sun. Double the perimeter, he said quietly. Triple her personal detail. I want eyes on every member of the Ashford family, every associate of Vale, and every entrance to every building she has ever set foot in. Move the yacht into position. Warm up the plane. Have the safe house in Como ready by midnight. Yes, boss? And Marco? Yes, if they touch her, if they so much as breathe on her, there will be nothing left of them. Do you understand? Nothing. Not their names. Not their houses. Not their bloodlines. Nothing. I understand, boss. Marco left the room, and Damiano stood at the window. A very long time, watching the woman in the garden below. They took her on a Thursday. She had gone, with a 2-person security detail, to the children's hospital. She had insisted. She had wanted to bring books and blankets to the ward where she used to volunteer. Damiano had not liked it, but he had agreed, because he had promised her that she would not be a prisoner in his house. The attack was fast, professional. A van pulled across the alley behind the hospital as she was returning to her car. 4 men, silenced weapons. Her 2 guards went down before they could draw. Nora felt a sharp sting in her neck, and then the world became very warm and very slow, and someone was lifting her, and someone was saying, "Do not damage her, he wants her alive." Then there was nothing. She woke up in a room she did not know. Concrete walls, 1 high window, a metal chair. She was tied to the chair. Her wrists hurt. Her mouth was dry. Her head was pounding. A man was sitting across from her, older. Handsome in the way a snake is handsome. Pale eyes, silver hair, an expensive suit. Miss Ashford, welcome. My name is Cassian Vale. I believe your fiancé has mentioned me. No, she whispered, he is not. How disappointing. I have mentioned him many times. Do not worry, I do not intend to hurt you, not yet. I only intend to use you as a small piece of leverage in a very large negotiation. Your Damiano has been in my way for quite a while. Tonight we resolve that you are going to help me. He will come for me. Oh, my dear, I am counting on it. Vale smiled. It was the coldest thing Nora had ever seen. Your sister was very helpful, by the way. She told me everything. Your routines, your fears, where you like to go. She really does hate you. Have you ever asked yourself, why? Nora closed her eyes. She thought about the garden. She thought about Damiano's hand in hers. She thought about the kiss he had pressed into her palm. She opened her eyes. He will come, she said quietly, and when he does, you will wish you had never heard my name. Cassian Vale laughed. Then he stopped laughing, because there was somewhere, very far away, a small sound like distant thunder. He tilted his head, he frowned. That is not possible, he said. It has been 40 minutes. He cannot possibly. The thunder got closer. At the cross compound, the moment Marco had put the phone down after receiving the call about the attack in the hospital alley, Damiano had said one word. Black. Marco had nodded, and picked up a different phone, and dialed a number that had only ever been dialed twice before in the history of the Cross organization. Black Protocol. Within 11 minutes, every asset the Cross Empire possessed on the eastern seaboard was in motion. Private helicopters lifted from 3 separate rooftops. 50 armed men in unmarked vehicles converged on 6 different locations simultaneously. Every phone line, every financial account, every property record associated with Cassian Vale, and every known associate was accessed, mapped, and marked. Federal contacts, 3 of them senators, 4 of them judges, 1 of them a director of a certain 3-letter agency, received calls that made them go very pale. Damiano himself was in a helicopter by minute 14, sitting perfectly still, wearing black tactical clothing, his storm-gray eyes fixed on the middle distance. They found her in minute 37. An abandoned industrial building on the north side of the river. Vale had thought he was being clever. He had used a shell company that was 3 layers deep. It had taken exactly 6 minutes for the Cross data team to unravel it. At minute 43, Damiano's boot went through the door of the room where Nora was being held. He did not shout, he did not fire his weapon. He walked into the room with terrifying calm, and behind him came 12 men who had already, silently, methodically, neutralized every guard in the building. There had been 14 of them. There were now 14 unconscious men zip-tied on the floors of various rooms. Not one shot fired. Cassian Vale stood up. He was still holding his glass of scotch. His hand was shaking. Damiano, my friend. Let us. Damiano did not look at him. He looked at Nora. He walked to her chair. He knelt down in front of her, and he took her face very gently between his hands, and he examined her, 1 square inch at a time for any sign of injury. Nora, I am all right, she whispered. I am all right, Damiano. He did not hurt me. Good. He untied her wrists. He rubbed the circulation back into them with his own hands. Po. He took off his heavy jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. He lifted her out of the chair, and she was not a small woman, but he lifted her as though she weighed nothing, and he carried her to the door. He handed her to Marco, who had appeared silently at his shoulder. Take her to the car. Warm blankets, water. The doctor is waiting. Yes, boss. Marco carried Nora out. She looked back, once over Marco's shoulder. When Damiano had turned around, he was walking toward Cassian Vale, very slowly. She did not see what happened next. She only knew that in the following 72 hours, Cassian Vale's entire empire ceased to exist. His companies were dissolved, his accounts were frozen, his political friends abandoned him overnight. His name appeared in 17 federal indictments. He himself was found alive but broken, in a holding cell, in a federal facility. Awaiting a trial, he would not survive as a free man. She only knew that her father's debts were called in, that the Ashford estate was liquidated within a month, that her stepmother had to move into a small, rented apartment, that her sister Vivienne was quietly, thoroughly, blacklisted from every social circle that had ever mattered to her, and reduced to working as a receptionist in an office where nobody knew her name. She only knew that when Damiano came home to the compound that night, at nearly 3 in the morning, he came straight to her bedroom, and he sat down on the edge of her bed, and he looked at her for a long time in the lamplight without saying anything. You came, she whispered. I told you I would. You came so fast I would have come faster if I could have. She sat up, She reached for him. He came into her arms without a word, and he pressed his face into the curve of her neck, and this terrifying, powerful, feared man shook against her, just once, just for a moment, and she held him and stroked his hair, and understood, finally, completely, what she was to him. Everything. She was everything. "I love you," she said quietly, into his hair. "Damiano, I love you." He lifted his head. His eyes were wet. He had not cried in 20 years. "Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you. I love you. I love you." He kissed her then, for the first time. Very slowly, very carefully, as though she were the only real thing left in the world. 6 months later, Nora Cross, née Ashford, stood on the marble steps of a new building in the eastern district of the city and watched a red ribbon flutter in the spring wind. The building was 3 stories tall. Pale stone. Warm light, glowing from inside, even in the afternoon sun. Above, the double doors carved in elegant script were the words, "The Alice Foundation, a home for children in long-term care." He was holding her hand. On her left hand, catching the sunlight, was a ring she had not been expecting. He had put it on her finger that morning at breakfast, without ceremony, without a speech, simply setting down his coffee cup and taking her hand and saying, "Marry me properly. Nora, in front of everyone. Let me give you my name." She had said yes before he had even finished the sentence. Now, in front of a crowd of several hundred people, families, doctors, journalists, dignitaries, and the entire staff of the Cross organization, standing in respectful rows at the back, Damiano lifted a microphone. He did not smile. He almost never smiled in public, but those closest to him could see the way his hand had not let go of Nora's, and the way his thumb kept tracing small circles against her knuckles. "I am not a man who gives speeches," he said, and a small ripple of nervous laughter moved through the crowd. "So, I will say only this. 2 years ago I walked into a hospital room by accident, and I saw a woman reading to a dying child. I did not know her name. I did not know her story. I only knew that in a world I had come to believe was cold, she was warm. In a world I had come to believe was cruel, she was kind. I have spent every day since then trying to be worthy of standing next to her." He turned to Nora. "This building is hers. Every stone, every window, every child who will ever be helped here will be helped because of her. Because she taught a man like me that the only thing power is truly good for is the protection of the people we love." He lifted her hand and kissed it. "Nora Cross, you are the great work of my life. Thank you for saying yes." The crowd erupted. Somewhere at the back, Marco Reyes was quietly wiping his eyes and pretending he was not. Nora, standing there in a soft cream-colored dress that fit her wide hips and full arms and soft curves perfectly, holding the hand of the most feared man on the eastern seaboard, looked out over the crowd and thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago. The woman in the plain black dress, standing in the shadow of the staircase, holding a silver tray she had not wanted to hold, waiting for a life that would never come. But that woman had believed, deep in her heart, that she was too much and not enough at the same time. Too large, too quiet, too soft, not beautiful enough, not clever enough, not worthy of being chosen. She had been chosen. She had been chosen first, and completely, and forever, by a man who had crossed a room full of glittering people to reach her, because he had seen her, really seen her, when no one else had ever bothered. She squeezed Damiano's hand. He looked down at her, and his storm-gray eyes softened in that private way they did. Only for her. "Take me home," she whispered. "Yes, my love." They cut the ribbon together. The children came in. And somewhere in the crowd a small girl in a pink beanie, who had been given the ribbon to hold, looked up at Nora Cross and smiled, and Nora smiled back, and the sun came through the tall windows and fell warm across all of them. The story of Nora Ashford and Damiano Cross became, in the years that followed, the kind of story people told quietly, in the way you tell stories you are not sure anyone will believe, the story of the fat serving girl and the silent king. The story of the sister who was never supposed to matter. The story of the woman who was chosen first, at last, because she had been kind when no one was watching. And because a man, who could have had anything in the world, had decided, one afternoon, in a hospital doorway, that he only wanted her. They had 3 children. They built 4 more foundations. Damiano Cross was photographed smiling many times, always with his wife on his arm, always looking at her as though she were the only person in the room. And Nora. In every photograph, in every year, in every season of the long happy life they built together, was exactly the size she had always been. Full and soft and warm. Wide of hip and generous of heart. She never once tried to be smaller. She never had to. She had been chosen exactly as she was, and she had been loved. From that first evening in the shadow of the staircase, exactly as she was, and she would be loved that way, she understood now, for the rest of her days. Because true love does not ask you to shrink. True love does not ask you to fit. True love walks across a crowded room, past every ornament and every arrangement, and it stops in front of you, and it says, "Put down the tray, come with me, I have been waiting," and you say yes. And your whole life begins.